When I was in high school, we used to play a lot of real-time strategy games. We used to do LAN parties, play Age of Empires, Command and Conquer Generals. That was a lot of fun. Sometimes we play StarCraft. However, with the years, I don't think I've ever played Command and Conquer ever again or Age of Empire. That being said, I have played StarCraft consistently, like every year, every other year, specifically StarCraft 2. We'll talk about that later. But the reason why I keep playing StarCraft is the same reason why we're probably not getting another game like StarCraft. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. This is a dissected video, so if you're not familiar with my channel, what I do is we'll talk a little bit about the game and then we'll go into the 3D models. In this case, because this is a real-time strategy game, we're going to look at some units and some buildings from when you are playing the game. So let's get started.
Thanks for the rescue, but I hope it ain't just the two of you.
General, you know I've always got a card to play.
Now, I know people are going to mention it. Yes, I know there is an FPS that Blizzard is supposed to announce at BlizzCon that is in the StarCraft universe. Everything that I've heard is that it is shooter. It's not a real-time strategy games. And the reason why I said what I said in the intro is because I don't think the current Blizzard is capable of making a game like the StarCraft or even StarCraft 2 that we remembered. Now, I don't play competitive, nor do I do any type of like ladder climbing or anything like that. I keep playing StarCraft because of its single player. Out of all the real-time strategy games that I've played, and I know there's some more recent ones, I think StarCraft is one of the better games to play. More so StarCraft 2, I think it's more accessible, and that's why it was very successful. And the reason why we're not going to get another StarCraft game, or maybe another RTS that is as successful as StarCraft, is because everything nowadays is geared towards how can we monetize this? And monetizing a real-time strategy game that is single player is very hard. So everybody wants to go into competitive. Even the ex-Blizzards that tried to make a spiritual successor to StarCraft didn't do so well, and I would dare say they failed at it because the game, it's not good. And one of the reasons why the game is not good and people are not playing it as much is because StarCraft, what made StarCraft great was its single player, its story. It wasn't so much the esports stuff. Yeah, the esports stuff brought a lot of money from esports and all that, but the players that bought the game broadly in the beginning of the franchise was for its single player. It wasn't for its competitive scene. Its competitive scene came later, and that's one of the mistakes that a lot of developers are making nowadays, whether it's indie or AAA or quadruple A, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that they are chasing the multiplayer hype first before having a fan base that wants to play this game. Especially something like StarCraft. There are, of course, successes when it comes to multiplayer. One of those is Arc Raiders. However, one of the things that they argue is that in Arc Raiders, it is the PvE that's been playing more than the PvP. So there's that. So when it comes to the single player of StarCraft, it was quite a long game for the time. You had 3 different races. Each race had several missions that interlaced with each other, and the story was very interesting. So you play the campaign. You didn't have just one campaign. You have the Terran campaign, you have the Zerg campaign, and then you have the Protoss campaign. And then the Brood War expansion came in, which was, I think, the first expansion of a video game ever that I purchased. The storyline, the way that everything is laid out during the campaign, and even back then when you didn't have high-end cinematics, every time you finish a set of missions, you were rewarded with a cinematic that for the time, those cinematics were actually pretty good looking. Not like nowadays, but they were something that you looked forward to. And you always look forward to the next piece of lore that was presented to you in the form of the briefing room with the talking portraits, which made it more interactive than just reading a bunch of text and just having a static portrait. Then came StarCraft 2 and elevated everything. Now you had a campaign where not only do you have amazing looking cinematics, but you also had like in-game cinematics that if you see the models for the time that this game released, these models look pretty good. I mean, it was Blizzard. Blizzard has always been praised for its high art, where its characters, environments, they are fantastic at doing art. Even the in-game cutscenes were very fun to look at. And they had some interactions where you can talk to the NPCs in the environment and they'll give you a piece of lore, or they have something to say about what was going on. Although I know a lot of hardcore StarCraft players do not like the mechanics of the most recent StarCraft. I think that for casuals like myself, they are fantastic, and it did correct a lot of problems that the first StarCraft had. Now, going back to what I mentioned before, that I really like about playing this game again and again, it's the story, it's the fact that you can see that movie unfold. And unfortunately, I don't think Blizzard, or for the most part any studios nowadays, will have the capability to craft a story like this, because first of all, there is no millennial writing. That wasn't a thing when this game was made. If you don't know what millennial writing is, it's the same as a Josh Whedon-esque writing, kind of like what you see in Marvel's. Everything is a joke, nothing matters because everything is a joke. In this game, there's humor. There's a lot of humor in it. But when things get serious, they are serious. And the way that the campaign is made, I don't think it would be made today. For instance, the campaign of Wings of Liberty is very like patriotic, kind of like American-esque done campaign, because you see the way that they present Rayner in certain parts of the game, and some of his speeches are very uplifting and very like the hero coming to the rescue and very hopeful.
You might be a damn pirate, Rayner, but whatever happens, you saved my boys today. And I won't forget that.
All in a day's work, General. After everything we've been through, past all the fire and fury, the one thing I know is that we can count on each other to get the job done. Or die trying, if that's what it takes. Because some things are just worth fighting for.
I don't think that's possible nowadays. I don't know why, but it seems like they cannot write a character like this. Then in the heart of the swarm, you have a female that is very powerful, which is Sarah Kerrigan's a beloved hero for anyone that likes StarCraft, but she's not a girl boss like nowadays. She is a powerful hero, and she is fighting to get the person that she loves.
Sarah?
I had to get you out.
What have you done?
What I had to.
Tell that to Phoenix. Tell it to the millions you butchered.
You swore you'd kill the Queen of Blades. You were the only one who ever believed in me. Do you still believe in me? I love you, Jim. Never forget it.
We're done.
And then the end, you got Legacy of the Void, where you got the Protoss, the very proud people. They are very proud of their heritage, and they would die defending what it means to be a Protoss. Actually, one of the things that make my hairs come up is whenever we see the cinematic of Zeratul saying that key phrase.
You shall not stand against me. My life for ire.
Aside from everything that I mentioned, another bit of the story that's very interesting about StarCraft is the fact that not everything is explained. There are bits of lore here and there that you can find, but not everything about the universe is explained. It feels like every sci-fi game and every sci-fi movie that comes out nowadays, everything needs to be explained and spelled out, and that makes the mystery of science fiction go away. That's why I like reading books. Most of the books that I've read so far, they don't over-explain the universe. They give you hints of things that are happening, and then you imagine the rest. That's one of the beauties of sci-fi, and that's why one of the things I love the most about science fiction. And by the way, if you want to also know more about that game made by the ex-Blizzards, that I already have a dissected video on StormGate. Link in the description down below if you want to watch that. And with that being said, let's look at the models. All right, and here is the unit section. Well, it's a model section. I call it the unit section because that is what we have here. We have a unit from each race from StarCraft, and I have the Queen of Blades, also known as Sarah Kerrigan, here because of something that I want to show you later on. We also have a couple of buildings. Now, there are a lot more things that we can see about this game, so if you want to see more, make sure you share, leave a like, and leave a comment so this video goes out and I know people want to watch it. And I'll make a second video about StarCraft. Most of these, what they have is the diffuse map, the Protoss, this is a Sellout. Most of them just have the diffuse channel and the specular map because of the way that the normal maps come in this game, which is very complicated to translate into a regular normal map that Blender can use. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. For an RTS, you can just go very low poly. You don't have to be worried about all the things. There are some things that you need to bake on normal maps. Of course, like I said, normal maps are very interesting here. But other than that, you can see, even without the wireframe, how low poly everyone is. 2,823 triangles is actually not that low for the time that this game came out. For an RTS, because you're looking at your units almost like at this distance, there is no reason for you to have higher poly count unless you are like that indie game that I've been seeing on X, where you can transition between third person and isometric. That is very cool, and I gather that you probably need a higher poly. But other than that, what you see here, you see that with this low poly of a unit, everything is made to just do the basic silhouette shape. So if we were to go like this, you can tell what this unit is. So that's one of the most important things when making, I'd say, any character for the most part, is to make sure that the silhouette is recognizable. If I were to turn off all the detail, all the colors, the wireframe, everything, you will be able to tell this unit apart from any of the other units that I'm presenting to you today. There is a higher poly version of this because you bake down the normal maps. However, one of the things that's very interesting about something that goes into RTS is how this model is posed. So he is in the basic A pose that you would rig one of these, but you can see that his hands are closed into a fist because there is no necessity for any finger movement whatsoever at this distance where you're seeing your unit. Even I think you can get as close as here. You still don't need to have his hands functional. He's a Sellout. He has the little blades here that apparently disappear because they're not part of the same mesh. But yeah, you can see everything all from behind him. Polygon wise, distribution wise, there is a flow to everything. Most of this character is hard surface, so I'm guessing he's probably rigged like a robot. and so are the Space Marines. Let me show you the texture real quick. These are for a Blizzard game, and you're gonna see what I mean later on, especially when we talk about Overwatch. If you follow this series, I've talked about other games that kind of follow the Blizzard-esque way of doing things, and you're gonna see that surprisingly for me, this actually follows the general convention of having a square texture. For more recent Blizzard games, and even in some models in this particular game, they do have the rectangular texture where it's actually a higher number on the vertical axis than on the horizontal axis. So it's a rectangle like this. It's very interesting. We'll see that later in the video. But yeah, this is just a regular texture. It's rearranged in not a specific pattern. It's not rectified. So it was very surprising for me to open these units and see that it doesn't follow what I thought was the Blizzard convention. All right, let's move on. And we have this little guy. He's a Zergling, the most basic unit aside from the drone, of course, from the Zerg. Very versatile when you're in game. And super low poly, because you can see he's only 900 triangles. He has very, very big polygons, but you can still see a flow around this character, and you can see that most of the things are clipping, probably to make rigging a lot easier. You can see like the, I don't know, let's call it what, fangs or horns over here. They are just clipping into the unit, same like this limbs over here, and same thing with the limbs and the hind legs, but still has a nice cool flow. This character looks like it has a nice smile over here, but everything looks awesome. I love how Blizzard characters are made. Despite of what you think of the company, I think they are one of the best in the business when it comes to stylized art. Now, if we go to the UVs, this is arranged just like the Protoss, and it looks like this model didn't bring the wings, which the wings are not default on all the Zergs. It's just when you are in the story mode. I don't play multiplayer like I mentioned in the intro. So when you are in the story modes, there's an evolution that you can give the Zergs to have these little wings. I'm pretty sure that that's what this texture represents. However, one of the things that is interesting is that we only have one half of the, let's call it the body-ish with the head. So you can see that it goes all the way down from here, and that's it. It's one thing overlaid on top of the other. Now let's look at the SCV. This is the building unit for the Terrans. If you haven't played StarCraft, you can see this guy is already post. I forgot to take off the post from him. But anywho, you can still see everything about this. Since this is a robot, everything is very blocky, super basic. Only 846 triangles, so even lower polyer than the Zerg. Of course, normal maps over here. But you can see that all of the detail for this unit is drawn there. It's just very blocky and very boxy because, again, you see it from this distance, and at this distance, it looks just fine. So many parts that are rigged and animated, you can see just like the Zergling, they are just parts that are clipping into one another. This is how you would make a robot anyways, just so it's easier to rig. You can see that these claws, even though it's one mesh, of course, you can see that this part of the claw is clipping, so it goes up and down when this guy is moving. And I don't know if the drill is a texture motion or if it's just this thing turning around, because sometimes when it's like things that are gyrating, you can just do that with textures. All right, you can see here that the SCV is just like the Zerg and the Protoss. The only difference being that it's a little bit tidier when it comes to the packing. I'm guessing just because of the nature of everything is hard surface here. There is and everything is kind of like a rectangular surface, so it's much easier to unwrap. All right, moving on, let's look at some buildings. You can see the building here. This is the basic Terran barrack, and there are a lot of diffuse and normal maps for this building because of all the things that you can select in StarCraft. But I just want to show you general geometry and how everything is composed. And you can see not so high, 3,878, a little bit higher than some of the units. I'm pretty sure other more complex units, like let's say the Dragoons or the Hydralisk, are a little bit higher poly than this. I just wanted you to see the basic units up close, and you can see everything here. Just like the units, this is just mostly the normal map. Actually, you got the normal map for this one working, but it's normal maps and diffuse. So if we go to barracks, nothing fancy. Everything is within the 0 to 1 space. There's just a couple things that I find are outside the 0 to 1 space, and I'm not gonna say that these are done on purpose, because when I pull some of the models, for some reason the way that you pull them doesn't come correctly unwrapped. We'll see that in a bit with Sarah Kerrigan, but I think that's the case here. So everything else is just the same. This is a hard surface model, so very tightly packed. Now, let's see, this is the hatchery from the Zerg, but you can see it's a lot more complex. The bigger the building, the more polygons it is. So you can see it's 7,800 triangles, and most of the things are to keep silhouette. It's nothing super detail. All the detail is being pulled by the textures. In this case, I couldn't pull the normal map because, again, we're going to talk about how complex these normal maps are in a second, but you can see everything that is modeled, even the little teeth inside. Okay, I skipped the UVs for those because it's more of the same. It's nothing different to show. I just want to show this unit because this is one of the hero units, it's Sarah Kerrigan. But you can see that for a unit, she's much higher than everything else. She's 5,900 triangles. So a lot more detail than your average unit. Like I said, not all the units are the same. They have a little bit of a wide range into how many polygons are in there, depending on what the unit does. Like the difference between Sarah Kerrigan and an SCV would be a lot. I think the SCV is usually much bigger than a human unit, but you know, for representation purposes, and I mean representation in how you see it, not the other kind of representation. I think that's why she's made a lot more bigger, because she's a hero unit and needs to be spotted well on the field. That being said, if you see her silhouette, she's pretty recognizable compared to anything else that's in the game. Now, just like the Zerg, the UV is laid out. One of her arms is actually a different mesh, but the way that the UV is laid out, you can see it right here. Just half of the head is on top of each other. That's something that you see a lot in Blizzard game for these low poly units, is you would put the head on top of the head UVs on top of each other, because you don't need that much detail, that much real estate from the UV map. Now, like I said, here is the normal maps from the StarCraft unit. This is actually from the Protoss unit. And one of the things that you notice is this isn't the color of an average normal map. And you can actually see that there is some transparency for people that are watching that are not artists. When you see the checker pattern, that means that you can see what's behind, and there is some transparency to the picture. So basically, there is no blue channel in the blue channel. The channel is, I think the blue channel is in the alpha, and the red channel it's not generated, because you can see we're in the alpha right now, and you can see that there is things right here. But if I turn on the green channel, you can see that there is more detail. So from what I gather, this is only green and blue channel, only the blue channel saved in the alpha channel. That's why I say it's kind of a mess to put these together in order for Blender to read it. This is just a more proprietary thing. I personally haven't seen this for other games yet. This is what's on every StarCraft unit when it has normal maps. It seems to be the green channel and the alpha channel, because if I turn these off, you can see the blue channel doesn't have anything, and the red channel doesn't have anything either. So, and by the way, I had to open it with GIMP, not with Photoshop, because these textures are DDS. That's very common in video games, that textures would be compressed to DDS, not necessarily PNG. So this is, like, if I take out the alpha channel, you can see the whole thing this way. However, without the alpha channel, there is some detail in there that is missing. So that's why I kind of managed to reconstruct the normal map for some units and not for every single unit. Okay, and one more thing that I wanted to show you is this model. You can see that this model is much different from the others because this is not a unit. This is Sarah Kerrigan from when she's doing her endgame cinematics, or when you are in the, let's say, the hub inside the Leviathan. This is the Sarah Kerrigan that you see. In game, this is called the Desert Kerrigan. I couldn't find the eyes. I think these are the eyes when she is the Queen of Blades again, after she becomes Primal. I couldn't find the other eyes, so this is what we got. But other than that, she has the diffuse and the specular map on. This is the character that I actually had to unwrap when I took her out. And I didn't unwrap her fully. What I mean is, it's just the UVs for some reason was all over the place, and I had to, you know, put it together with what I was seeing on diffuse color. Now, this is one of the things I want to show you, is that when it comes to, let me get out of this and select this. When it comes to the UVs, you can see how the UVs are laid out. This is what I know as the classical Blizzard way, where you have the UVs rectified from one side to the other. So when they're cloned, because you only have one side of UVs, you don't do both sides since everything is symmetrical. So that means that you rectify this side so there isn't a discrepancy and there isn't a seam when you do both sides. And I think it looks fantastic. And this is pretty much the way that I learned how to do character art and how to do stylized art. And as I mentioned before, this is another thing that I see a lot in Blizzard textures, is instead of them being square textures, you can see that's a rectangular texture. The reasoning behind this, I don't know. This is more of an engine thing, although you can do things like this inside of Unreal and Unity. I'm thinking this has to be for optimization purposes, but the way that the engine would ingest it, I'm guessing this is what makes it useful, the fact that it's rectangular and not square. One of the things though is in Unreal Engine, I'm not sure about Unity, but I know that in Unreal, if you do textures like this, then Unreal cannot generate the mid maps, which are the other level of detail textures for you. And as you can see, the head, it is unwrapped the classic way, and everything is done into one UV. It's not an overlay UV or anything like that, because this is a unit that you see a little bit more up close, so you need a little bit more real estate when it comes to texture. However, you do have a lot of transparency on this, not only on the diffuse, but the normal map is also the same kind of normal map that I show you on the other texture. Now you can see that this is modeled more from, like, it would be like a third person kind of character. You can see that she's 25,000 triangles, which for today is really not high, even though you can see that she is very detailed. The textures do a lot of heavy lifting, and she does look very good up close. There is a lot more geometry on her face, of course, for facial movements. She does emote a lot when you are playing, and in the in-game cutscenes, that does happen a lot. And I think overall, she looks pretty great. You can see everything follows a particular flow. Even here on these parts where there's actually following the bake. So everything bakes very nice, and it has these inserts. There's something I want to do with this character in the future. I'm not going to say why, but something that you are going to want to see, because it's with MetaHuman. It's going to be super cool when it's done. So make sure you subscribe for that. Now the hair, it's not hair cards, it's hair geometry, because it's not real hair. Her Zerg hairs, it's like dreads. And you can see, if you played Overwatch, you can see certain details that are actually familiar between Sarah and other characters from Overwatch. Do you know where else is this in Overwatch? There's a character that has this exact thing in one of her limbs, but it's much bigger. Just let me know if you know what I'm talking about. All right, thank you so much for listening all the way to this point. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video around if you want to see a second video on StarCraft. I have a lot more models to show. We can talk about Legacy of the Void and talk a little bit more about Heart of the Swarm, because I love this game. There's so much more to show you. I just want to see if people are interested in this game even more. So again, just leave a comment, leave a like, and share this video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.